This is the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast, where we spread awareness for men's mental health and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. New episodes drop weekly. This is the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast, and I'm your host, Steve. Today, I am joined by John Martinez. John is a former infantry veteran in the Army. He spent 15 years in law enforcement as a police captain, and he also is part of the Good Leader brand. He's the founder of that, the Good and Dangerous. John, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, let's get started with where did you grow up, man, and what did childhood look like for you before you joined the Army and then got into law enforcement?
I grew up in Ventura County. I was born in Oxnard, California. It's kind of in the middle between LA and the Bay. There's a brand out here, and they like to say that we're not LA, we're not the Bay, so we're kind of in between. I wouldn't say Central Coast, but we're kind of there. Um, yeah, I think before the military, originally, my mom had me and my sisters when we were young. So that was all that, that was a different experience. So a lot of the way I talk about, having good male role models comes from that. Luckily she was able to meet my dad. I never refer to him, me personally, I never refer to him as my stepdad. To me, he's my dad. So he raised me, and that's where I kind of learned basically, hard work and things like that of that nature. So around that time in the 90s, that was more, I would say, like the gangster era of California. A lot of the growing up like that. So that's what was around me. For me and my cousins, we all kind of were in the same, our dads were not really around like that. My dad, like, well, he was around, but he was working all the time. So that's just how it was with him. He was working a lot, and he was just for the most part always doing that. But I learned that hard work aspect from him, and my mom was, raising us. So I think maybe when I was around a freshman in high school, I started thinking about the military, just because I noticed a couple things in myself. One was I wasn't afraid of conflict because my mom kind of raised me to be like, hey, if someone wants to fight with you, you need to stand up for yourself and fight. So growing up, I was like that, but I also didn't ever see myself as being like a gang member necessarily, or doing anything like that. I didn't like please. I didn't like guys that picked on people and things like that. So guys I tended to be around, I feel like we were all pretty mellow, but we are not passive. We
Gotcha.
were, and so that's kind of the way we kind of grew up in that environment back then. That's how it was. Like you couldn't, if you were, I seen a lot of guys that would become, victims of violence because they would not defend themselves. So I knew at a pretty early age that this was something I was gonna not be like. And so when the military came up and I would start talking to people about it, because the only person I knew who had been in the military was my dad's two brothers. So they kind of gave me a little bit of like guidance on it. And I kind of just like started thinking about it. I was actually supposed to go my senior year of high school to the military. I was supposed to graduate early, and I was supposed to go, but then I started dating some girl when I was a junior and messed my grades, and and that kind of put me behind. So I ended up graduating just regular on time. My grades picked my grades back up, and then I went right to the military. I literally graduated school and I left on July 26th. Was it 99? Yeah, 99, and then went basically, I was home for, like, a month just hanging out with my friends, and then took off right to the military, and, from there was, a little bit of I wanna say the same. I tell everyone about my experience in basic training. It wasn't a bad experience, but it wasn't some good experience either. When I first got there, I think within the first they had just finished a class, and so we were kind of in some weird, I don't know what they called it, but we were for like 3 weeks. We weren't in a company. We didn't start basic training for like 3 weeks. So my basic training
Wow.
ended up being, I think, almost like 21 or 22 weeks long. So they just
Jeez.
had yeah, it was for a while. So they just put us with a drill sergeant, and he basically for like 3 weeks, who would just kind of like march around, read our field manual, and get into, people would, start getting on each other's nerves, and everyone's kind of just because you're kind of anticipating what's supposed to happen.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
yeah, and then we did that. And from that point, um, I think 2 or 3 weeks into it, I got into a fight with the guy because that's where I experienced this is what I tell people for myself. For California, I think we stereotype people. When I went to Georgia, that's the first time I saw, like, real, like, kind of, I would say, more racism kinda.
Yeah,
And so
yeah, yeah.
me and this guy got into a fight, which was funny because at the end of basic training, we ended up being friends. So
Nice.
yeah, so it just was what it was. But yeah, it was that's where I kinda say a lot of the leadership stuff I started thinking about came from those experiences because I had 2 really good drill actually 3 really good drill sergeants, 2 kind of hard asses, and 1 who was more, I would say, more kind of a mentor type of guy, and I learned a lot of things from them, and I had 1 shitty drill sergeant who was very much like I can't tell you anything good that he passed. Even being older now, and sometimes you think in hindsight, like conversations, like, "Oh, this is what they meant." I don't really have a good experience with him. But
What
after
what what year was this? Like, when did you what year did you join the Army?
99,
Okay, okay.
yeah. So I
I didn't mean
wasn't
to
a
interrupt
weird.
you.
Oh, no, no worries. I was in that unique experience because I was in before September 11th and thereafter September 11th. So
Right,
it was like
right.
a so I saw the whole transition of what was going on.
Mm,
So basic training was, it wasn't all good, but it wasn't an all bad experience. I learned a lot about myself, pushing myself. That's where I kind of learned, I guess, the mental aspect for me of you know, um kind of learning to like your body will do what your mind tells it to do. That's what they taught, for me, that's where they taught me that. Cause before that, growing up, I wasn't really playing any organized sports, played basketball, and got into fights. Like that was my brain. And then so being there, I was around these guys that were like played football, different stuff like that. This is my first time being part of something that was organized where you're like, hey, get up and do this and do that. And so it was a different experience. A little bit hard at first for me to get used to it, but once I got used to it, then I did good. I noticed that's kind of how I am when it comes to things, whether it was the military or whether law enforcement. I'm not a person that just like knows how to do stuff. I tend to get better over time and kind of
mhm,
grow into the what I'm doing. So
gotcha.
when I left there, I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, which is kind of weird because I was the only one from my platoon that went to Fort Lewis. I
Wow.
think I was the only one that like, had got to select my duty station because everyone else went to, I think, Fort Stewart. I think there's like
Mm,
I think it's in Georgia still. I believe so.
mhm. Yeah.
And then I went to Washington, and that's where I met my squad leaders, Sergeant Price. He was one of the guys I've talked about before on social media that he ended up he was my first squad leader. Awesome, awesome guy. He ended up getting killed in Afghanistan. I tell people what's crazy is that like not in my platoon, I don't know how many people ended up getting killed over that like 10, 12 year span. But from my squad alone, half of the guys got killed within 10 years,
Wow.
which was crazy.
Wow.
So and
Yeah.
so I didn't know because I went did my time September 11th and all that stuff happened. One of the guys even had got out. This guy Campos, he actually got out before me, went back to Texas, and then maybe like I don't know how many years later, I'm talking to one of my old sergeants, and he tells me, "Yeah, Campos died too." I'm like, "What?" I was like, "Campos, when did he even go back in?" He was like, he went back in. Was gonna have a kid, got married, went back in, and they ended up getting killed with the IED. So him,
Wow.
Sergeant Price, and Sergeant Ryan, not Ryan, Sergeant Adams, all got killed at different times. So Price basically he died in I think IED. Campos died in an IED, and and Adams died in an ambush. He's the one that became a Green Beret. But what was crazy with Adams was he was the last guy that I hung out with before I left. I actually spent a night at his house. He was trying to give me a friggin' Saint Bernard. He had a big ass Saint Bernard. Yeah, yeah, he had a big ass Saint Bernard and like the Beethoven dogs, and he had a bunch of puppies, and he kept trying to convince me to like take this Saint Bernard with you. And I don't know. I was like, I don't want no Saint 'cause I was like it was like a weird story, but I spent the night at his house, and the crazy thing about the whole conversation was about him, becoming a Green Beret. So he was at the very hadn't even started the process yet, and he kept telling me, he's all, "I'm gonna become a Green Beret." He's all, "You should, re-enlist and let's go become Green Berets." And I'm like and I'm 21 at the time, right? A lot of times now when I think about it, I'm like, maybe if I knew better, I probably would have, like, pursued it. But at the time, I was just like, man, dude, we've been on. They put us on what was it, 72-hour recall the entire time
Mm,
after September 11th. So I had just gotten married at the time. So for like a good year and a half, I wasn't home at all. I don't know if anyone else has
mhm.
been 70-hour recall. I was basically we were in the barracks, we were at work, or we were getting PT'd or doing training for like a year and a half and weren't allowed to
Wow.
take off. Yeah, so that I kinda knew if I didn't get out that was gonna be kind of a detriment to my marriage because I wasn't
Yeah.
around. So I kinda had to make a choice, and being honest about it, I actually thought they were just gonna end up, recalling me back. I just thought, like, they were gonna send me and then you what do they do that what's that thing that they put you on? It's like the I
Inactive ready reserve.
Yeah, so I kinda was like, "Man, they're just gonna call me back anyways," because one of the guys, Sergeant Ryan, I believe he went to reserve and then he got called back like a couple months later. So I was like, I remember getting home, they sent me the paperwork, I filled it out, and I'm like, I'll just do what I'm doing, and they're gonna end up calling me back if anything happens or whatever. But it never happened, so I was just like kind of surprised. And
Yeah.
then so once I got home, I kind of like just worked different jobs. I wasn't kind of I think I don't know, this is just me. I don't know if other people once you get out of the military sometimes you're kinda like, "Well, what do I do now?" Because all my skill set had nothing to do with practical stuff. It's like, okay, I can shoot guns. I got taught how to ambush people, blow things up. And then I get home and it's like, none of that pertains to what's going on. You know what I mean? So I
Mhm.
felt a
Yep.
little bit not lost, but just more like, well, what I do? So I started just working kind of different jobs, and I always went into the military with the idea of becoming a cop.
Okay.
But I didn't know anyone that was a cop. And where I lived, all the perception of cops was kinda negative, and the only reason I had a positive perception of being a cop was that there was a guy at my high school, his name's, Officer Laredo, they used to call him a big time Laredo, and he was our school resource officer, and he was always cool, he was always, like, walking around, had, cool slick back haircut, always, like, joking with the kid, his daughters went to school, very different perception of what I thought a cop was or my interactions with seeing with cops, around town.
Yeah.
So he actually changed my mind about what I thought a cop could be. I'm like, "Man, you can be a cop without being a dick." Like
Yeah.
that's what I literally thought.
Yeah.
So um after a couple, couple years kind of just working different jobs and I worked some good jobs where I was making good money but I remember this one particular job where I was making good money and I just was like, I remember, calling my wife at the time and being like, I'm gonna drive this forklift into the building and say fuck it because I'm like, I can't do this. Like the money was not making me happy to be there. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's
Yeah.
because I came from an atmosphere of where my first real job was the military of being around guys and brotherhood and we're shooting and we're fighting and we're doing all these things. And then to now just like, hey, you're gonna do this every day and you'll make good money, but you're not gonna really like it.
Yeah.
that that's kind
Yeah.
of that's kind of how it felt to me. And so I took then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna actively start pursuing becoming a cop. So I started studying, taking the test, ended up going to, the police academy, did all that stuff, and that kind of began my journey in, law enforcement and then kind of, working my way through the ranks, um, and that was a whole different experience in itself. Always to me, law enforcement and the military are kinda 2 totally different beasts, like, they're the same, some similarities, but they're not. 'Cause,
Yeah. I
one of
agree.
the things I started learning for myself was in the military, it was more of this kind of like camaraderie. We all succeed or we all don't type of
Mhm.
attitude. And as a cop, I think one of the first things I was getting taught was, you know, you're kind of for yourself a little bit in a way. Like you're going to be on calls by yourself. You're going to make decisions by yourself. And I get that aspect of it, but I also think that's where it causes other negative aspects later on the road in your career because it does become sometimes about yourself and not like maybe the guys with you. I don't know if that makes sense from uh from your
I
standpoint.
Yeah, and I think I kind of experienced that too, where I think in law enforcement you're given a certain amount of responsibility, but yet it's different because you don't have that. mentality of like, hey, we're brothers, we're going to be fighting this together. Because you're right, sometimes you, depending on the size of the department, you're going to be answering calls or making traffic stops, and it may just be you. So you've got to be
Yeah.
able to make those decisions without having a battle buddy or backup like readily available sometimes. And I was going to ask you, John, like when you went from the infantry into law enforcement, was it a big surprise or big shock for you outside of maybe the team component, to where, in the military there's a lot of discipline, there's a lot of expectations, to law enforcement? Now, for me, my experience, law enforcement was way more laid back than the military. Even like nowadays, there's guys in my hometown that are rocking beards like this in uniform. I'm old school. I graduated high school in '97. Dude, I would never have this in a uniform. It's
Yeah.
just me though. That's how I was
Yeah.
brought up. I think it's disrespectful. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just curious what your take is on, or what your take was of going from army to law enforcement. Was it a shock for you?
Yeah, there's definitely some different aspects when it comes to that, and I do agree. I think there's I would say, because you meet some guys that are prior, and I guess it was usually pretty easy to tell because I used to run into guys just random spots. Like I remember one time going to the range because at a certain point in my career I was the RSO. And so I went down to the range. I started talking to some guy, and he saw me, and I came out of my car, and I had my boots all shined up and everything. He's all Army or Marine. That's what he told me. And I was like Army. He's like, I know. Like basically, you could tell who was who. I guess
Mm-hmm.
that's the way it kind of came across. And
That
so
makes
I
sense.
did notice there was guys that didn't have that same experience, that they tended to have maybe a different mindset about it, or a lot of, yeah, it was different. It's definitely a different beast. That's why when people try to compare the organizations, like, what do they try to say, like they're police becoming militarized? It's like, nah, it's not. There's too many. Yeah, there's too much individuality in a department forever to become military. You're not marching in step to, like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on certain things, yeah, you're gonna have to do that, but for the most part, everyone has their own perception. I mean, I see a lot of, I think, like, chiefs and police and things right now, that I hear some of the things they're saying, and they sound crazy to me. Like, how are you that high up in a leadership position they're saying that? But also I don't know their background. I don't know what they would be, why they would be saying. I think the one, and it's not to say anything next, she feels she feels how she feels, but the one chief of police from Washington D.C. just like got on the podium and kind of said some stuff, right? Like off the cuff type of things. And I was kind of, I don't know. It's where I think in the military you kind of are a little bit more. You have to be a little bit more mindful of your words, but it's also because they're in every part of your life. You know what I mean? They can go
Yeah.
check your
Oh
house.
yeah.
You know,
Yep.
as a cop, you're in, or someone like me. I'm not going to my guy's house and saying, "Let me see, make sure your room's clean."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely think that there's a different kind of expectation of, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on. Where in the military, you are close like that. I don't know. So one of the funny things, I guess, after 9/11 was, right, they were like, "Hey, you guys need to be ready to deploy," because they gave us our orders, and they're like, "Sign this and that." So they would do these random ass drug tests, like at 2, 3 in the morning, and wake everyone up. And
Man.
I tell people, I said they would literally make you come out of your rooms in your, like, boxers or whatever you're wearing, and you're just standing in the hallway. And they're like, "Bro, come on, we're gonna piss right now, piss." And I tell people, I'm like, I said, I don't think they do that. Anything nowadays, they'll probably get in trouble for if they did it, but what I mean? You can't do that as a cop to other cops. You know what I
No.
mean?
No.
So,
Well, I noticed,
so
and
like
you
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 said,
well, I
no,
was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, like, because you had the rank of captain, and one thing I noticed in law enforcement, that there seemed to be like a blur in the lines with the chain of command and the rank structure, because the normal patrolman would just go shoot the shit with the on shifts supervisors, like no big deal. And I always kind of had that mindset, like, hey, there's commissioned officers, there's enlisted guys. I'm going to treat the supervisor in a role of like, I'm not your buddy. I'm supposed to respect you and work maybe for you. But it was weird, dude, because like guys would just go in and call them by their first, like a lieutenant by their first name,
Yeah,
telling stories and joking around. And I really struggle with that, man. It was hard for me. Like, I didn't want to be at the station hanging out with the higher ups. I wanted to be out
Yeah.
away from it. And a lot of guys, I didn't fit in because of that. Because a lot of these guys, it was a good old boy network. It was like, hey, Bob's a sergeant now, or Bob's a lieutenant. Let's go get drunk with Bob. No big deal. And I was always like, man, that's weird. Like he's higher up than me. So I don't know. I never really understood that.
Yeah, you know, there definitely is, and some of the guys, they use it to their advantage, and but also some of the leadership uses it to their advantage. For me, what I saw was like for myself, because I worked my way up through the ranks. Because when I came in as a patrolman, and then I was a FTO, then I was a sergeant, and then I was a trainer, and then I became the captain after that. Because basically the trainer and the lieutenant aspect, the as far as like the job, the rank of it was the same. We're just doing different functions. But one of the things I had to put a stop to was, I mean, I always talked with everyone, like, I was always, engaging with everyone, but one of the things I did put a stop to was, like, kinda what you're saying, because what I did see was sometimes leadership, like, say my lieutenants, for example, where I had some leadership above me where they wanted them to go tell them what they like, "Hey, I think this is going this," and so I kinda put a kibosh to that, because what I saw was their intention behind it was not to make the department better. It was for their own personal gain. I'll say that in a way, like where it's
Hmm.
like, "Hey, come tell me what's going on shift," and you're not their direct supervisor, and now you're going back to me. They're trying to come to me like, "Hey, well, I heard about this and this." Well, that's not what happened. And then I'll go to my lieutenants and be like, basically, "You're not going above me." That's why I had to basically make it real clear. I'm like, "You're not going above me. Like, if there's
Yeah.
an issue there, you bring it to me and we'll address it." Because and I was pretty transparent about it. I said, "These guys sometimes want information, and we don't either have all the facts, or they wanna have a knee-jerk reaction to something, or sometimes they personally just don't like the guy, and
Hmm.
now this is just ammo for them to do something." And I used to have battles with some of the guys above me where I'd be like, "If you wanna, how about we switch positions? If you wanna do my job, you can come do it, and I'll do your job, if you really wanna be that involved in patrol." And and then they wouldn't like that, but that
Yeah.
was to me the truth. It's like, you're not a cop, but you wanna do cop shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm like, if this is my title and this is my position, then I'll do what I have to do. And I know, and I never had knee jerk reactions to things, real very early in my career. I mean, I mean, it just came down to even being taught about domestics, right? Like originally, if you look at like the 70s, 80s, and maybe some of the 90s, where if you went to a domestic, most of the time it's the guy's fault. The guy is the perpetrator. And then when I was going into law enforcement, it was more the aspect of, hey, look at the totality of the circumstances. Because I went to plenty of domestics where it looked like initially the guy was being called the perpetrator, and ended up being the girl being the perpetrator. So that's the same way I treated being, in that position. I would listen to all the facts, talk to the guys, figure out what went on before I would say, hey, this or that's happened. Where sometimes when the initial information would get out, they'd be like, "Oh, why did they do a use of force on this guy? Was it really necessary?" And I'm like, "Well, let me get all the facts." And then go there and find out, yeah, it was necessary. This guy refused these and this commands, told them to fuck off, told them he wasn't gonna go with them, this, and that, and then escalated that thing. They didn't just drag him out of his car for no reason, beat him up, and
Yeah.
regardless. And I understand that's what that guy's saying, but but when you have, but when you look at the facts and how that led up to that, and these guys are not like that, because that was never a big thing in our department. There was never this excessive use of force, things like that. So when guys try to be that, I ran it, and me being on patrol, I was able to know that there was a lot of people that, and I'm pretty sure your experience with it too, they have a whole different story when it comes down to to what actually happened.
Hmm.
And even before I tell people, like before the whole like defund the police and BLM and all that stuff. I remember it was his name Dorner? Was it Dorner? I don't know if you've ever heard about that. The guy he was from like LAPD. He went and killed like a couple, and then they killed him in like around, I want to say it was like in Big Bear. He was an ex-Navy
Uh,
guy.
I don't remember
It,
that.
yeah, it was a big thing here for a while, because he was a, I want to say he was former LAPD, ended up leaving, and then he went and killed some couple kind of a little bit not too far from where I live.
Okay.
and then they ended up like hunting them down. I think it was like Big Bear or something. But I remember, so
Wow.
when that was going on, having interactions with some, I don't know why I remember this particular traffic stop, but I stopped this guy, and he told me, he's like, "Are you gonna shoot me because I'm black?" I was like, I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Just give me your registration, give me your insurance, and let me we'll be fine." But I don't know why that encounter. So I think I started seeing these seedlings of things like that because they would see it in the news because we were looking for him, who was a black
Yeah.
male, and then
Mhm.
that kind of led to where when it was like defund the police, and I kind of think that progression and that kind of um what I saw was kind of eventually what led me to like seeing how political law enforcement was becoming. Because I always tell people for the first 10 years, we never saw that. It was
Mhm.
we're doing our jobs, we're out there just, doing our work. And then all of a sudden it became very more political. Every time someone said something, it was true. So
Yeah. It definitely has changed a lot. I want to kind of shift a little bit, John, and I've seen a lot of your posts online and some of the content you do. When in your story and in your career and your personal life, when did God become real for you? Have you always had strong faith? Were you raised in in a home with church? Like how did that come about?
I was always raised around in church, kind of. My grandma was a Sunday school teacher.
Nice.
I grew up Catholic. I think a lot of people in my area, we grew up Catholic. Um, the most I actually learned from, I didn't, this is just my experience with Catholic church. People might have a different experience. I didn't learn a lot from the Catholic church. I just learned that you go, you kneel, you stand up. I was always with my grandma. She was very involved in the church. So she would take us, and we'd go with her to mass, and then all the old ladies would hang out and do whatever they're doing, and we'd be running around playing. But one of the things I did, what my grandma did kind of show me, was there used to be that show. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was called Superbook. It was called like
I don't think so.
it was this old school cartoon, like where they had all these like Bible stories, like all kinds of different Bible. And for some reason, that's where I learned a lot about the
Hmm,
Bible, was all these stories
that's
that
cool,
were like
man.
cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like cartoon forms of Bible stories. So
Okay.
I watched a lot of those. I learned a lot. So I always had religion, in my life.
Hmm.
I think what I struggled with, especially when I got older in high school and stuff, I was honestly getting into like fight. Like I used to tell my mom, like I said, everything when I go to church, they're telling me you gotta be a good person, don't do this. And I said, but when I'm out here living my life, and I said the guys are, they're trying to jump me and my friends, or we're getting into fights, and I'm like, I'm just having to do what I gotta do. So I felt like it was a conflict. I felt like I was being told like I can't be, religious or believe, well, because I'm not doing the right thing, but at the same time, I'm trying to survive in everyday life. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So and the same thing kind of happened when I went into the military, and I went into law enforcement. I always had that weird kind of, I want to, somewhat of a conflict, I guess, in myself about it, following what happens in church and following what's going on, because it's like, hey, you are you're it says, because people used to bring that up in my school. It says, "Thou shalt not kill." Like, there's no reason for it. And then as a cop, you're being like, well, they're training me to, I might have to
Yeah.
kill someone. I might have to stop the
Right.
threat. So this cop.
Right.
So at a certain point, I would say when I was about 35, I want to say I was around that age. My parents used to go to it was is it Calvary Chapel? I think it was Calvary Chapel Church. And so during COVID and all that stuff like that, I started kind of going with them on Sundays and getting kind of back into it. And what I noticed, there was a lot of I think the messaging, at least from when I was younger, had changed a lot. Where it was like, church is not for perfect people; it's for imperfect people. We're all trying to do the right thing. And for some reason, I just kind of made peace with that. I said, you know what, this is how I am. I believe in God. I was raised Catholic. I became Christian, and I said, this is how I am. So I just kind of like accepted it. I don't know. I just kind
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
made this peace with myself about it, and said, no, this is just how I am. And I said, I'm not gonna feel bad about it. And the church I go to now, it's funny, like I posted this thing that said Christians are supposed to be threats to evil. I think that's what I wrote in the post.
That's awesome. Yeah.
My pastor actually said that. So there was a lot of times when I'd be feeling this way of like, I'd be like, I don't know, it was the cop in me, the military in me, when I was seeing all these things going on as far as just in society. And I'm like, why is everyone like acting like this is like cool? They're like afraid to speak up. And I was never like that. Like I was pretty open. Like when the whole,
Hmm.
a lot of the stuff was going on with defund the police, I'm like, I ain't taking a knee, nor am I telling anyone else to. I was like, I'm not. I was very like not over, or I'm just overly talking about it, but I was not gonna conform, I guess, in that way. That was just how I felt about it because I'm like, this is not correct.
Lead by example.
And yeah. So when I started thinking more like that, it was funny because then at the same time the church I was going to, they kind of they ended up changing from one church to the other one. So the church I go to now is called Shepherd Church, but they used to be called Real Life. And the pastor's a little bit younger, but a lot of the stuff he says is a kind of it kind of in the same vein. So I've talked to him a lot of different times, and I think that comes from his background because he trains, he does like jujitsu, and like so he's a pastor that does that stuff, and he's a little bit younger. So I
Nice.
started liking that more because to me this is just, I guess, how I know everyone kind of has different. I'm like, I don't feel like Christian or Christian men are like we're supposed to be some like weak passive men that just let
Mm-mm.
every trample all over us, and we're just like, oh, Jesus. This is what I tell people. I'm like, yeah, Jesus said turn the other cheek. I said, I'm not Jesus. That's what I tell them. I'm not Jesus. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
told people straight out. I said, I know I'm not. I said, I'm not.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to claim to be perfect. I said, I said, I don't go looking for fights. I said, but I'm not scared to fight, and I'm not. And
Yeah.
if you do something to me, yeah, I'm like, I'm not Jesus. That's always my answer to
That's
that. And
awesome.
so
Yeah.
And so I kind of noticed that, and I kind of got a like, I don't know, it was like a weird like fire for it to want to do it because as I was transitioning out of getting out of law enforcement, I started not liking law enforcement as much anymore. Not because I didn't like the job, and not because I don't think it's a great career, and not because I don't think that serving people. I didn't like. I think the some of the people and the politics involved in it anymore. I started noticing like we're becoming like a political pawn of what society wanted us to be. And I almost
Hmm.
felt there was a conflict of interest with going on with that. And I still think there is. I think if you say like, I mean, you can see it in LA, right? If you have a mayor who's very, I would say, left leaning, and then you have a police department who's supposed to enforce laws, and you don't, but you're left leaning, so you don't like it. So you're going to tell them not to do certain things, regardless of what the consequences of those things are. I almost feel like I don't feel like I feel like law enforcement needs to become its own separate entity away from forces that have no that they shouldn't be able to control it. And I saw that within my
Yeah.
old apartment. People that have no business telling the apartment what to do, but somehow had influence over it. And that started creating the conflict. And I think that's right on what's the problem with law enforcement. I think all these mayors, all these other entities, it needs to be left to its own device. And obviously, have some kind of maybe some oversight, but not it can't be like, hey, the mayor of LA is gonna tell the sheriff of the sheriff department of LA what to do, and he's gonna tell the police department what to do. And because then it starts creating this like, what's the actual agenda of things? I don't know. That's what I kind of see going on.
It is very political. It does, and it does seem like it's changed a lot over the years. And I agree with you. I mean, I think that those agencies need to be able to do police work and not have this, you know, the strings being pulled because it's a political agenda. I mean, we still see that even now with the current administration in different parts of the country. I mean, I know I live in an area that's predominantly quote unquote conservative, but you still see like the biggest city in Tennessee is Nashville. Nashville is a lot different than majority of the state. It's more like it's trying to become LA. That's their goal. And so you see a lot of those mindsets of, oh, every police officer is bad. They shouldn't be doing this. And it's not true. There's plenty. It's like any other job. There's going to be good cops. There's going to be good people. And then there's going to be a few that shouldn't be doing the job. But that's any job really that's out there. You can't weed
Yeah,
out everybody. So
yeah,
I agree with you, man.
yeah.
So was that the foundation of kind of good and dangerous? Is that how you kind of started that? once you got out of law enforcement?
Yeah, because I kept thinking, because I wanted, I've always like helping people, because the guys that I mentioned were like earlier in the podcast that helped me, my first squad leaders, guys that had taught me good stuff, my dad. I always tell people, I said, I picked up, I remember going to this class and the guy said it, grocery cart mentality, right? Like, to me, my dad taught me hard work. Sergeant Price, he taught me to be, you could still be friendly and you could still be and expect a lot from your guys, but still be a good person type of thing.
Mhm.
Sergeant Adams was, he was a hard charger. Campos was he was a cool athletic guy, and other guys, one of my lieutenants, he passed away not too long ago, maybe like, I think it was about a year and a half ago, and very I would say you wouldn't think this guy was a cop out in town, like rode motorcycles, little short Filipino dude, stocky dude. He had my dad actually grew up with them. Had a reputation for being, pretty much a street fighter before he became a cop, as far as like handling business. And so all these guys, I picked up all these things from him, and so I was like, well, what I noticed was, as men, I guess there's not always a lot of, it's kind of like everyone's learning on their own, but no one's wanting to like share what they're learning. So it's kind of like, hey, you learn one thing, but no one was really helping each other. And so I started kind of looking at the space, and I started saying just different things. And this is not to, everyone has to make their own choices of what they do or don't do. But I saw influencers. I saw I don't know what they call it, lifestyle influencers. I saw kind of
Mhm.
like people just controversial for the sake of being controversial. And then in our space, I kind of saw people doing it, but they're very much leaning on entirely law enforcement or entirely military. And some of the conversation that people were having with me was, they're like, and I had people tell me this, they're like, can I listen to your podcast if I'm not a cop or I'm not
Mm.
a military? And then so to me, I'm like, yeah, like, you don't need to be this because I was this, or because like, and I didn't want any, to me, it's like, we shouldn't ostracize, other men because they haven't walked the same path as us. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes as cops or military, there is that tendency to do that. You don't know what I've been through.
Yeah.
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 And it's like, well, yeah, but we don't know what they've been through also. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Right.
also everyone has to have everyone serves a different purpose. A guy that's a doctor or helps a teacher or helps kids or whatever he does, you're telling me that his job is not as righteous as the cop's job? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So to me, and I think that that trying to, I guess, humbleness, and he always allowed me to like have those relationships. I'm not one of those guys that kind of only had cop friends. I always kinda
Okay.
stay engaged with everyone, and I think that's what allowed me to not feel this, like, I think some people, I guess, sometimes when you leave the job, I've had people message me about that, like, "Dang, I don't know what to do, I don't," and to me, I was like, if everything around your life is revolved around being a cop, I mean, if you're talking in 10 codes and, everyone and everyone's a threat, like, you're gonna have a hard time. Like, see, you know what I mean? Like, it's one
Yeah.
of those things,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, you're gonna have a hard time transitioning away from that. And so you need
Mhm.
to, and but also you're missing out on a lot of knowledge that other people could give you. Because I've learned a lot about business things from people that had nothing to do with law enforcement. They're running
Yeah.
businesses. But because I'm
Yeah.
been listening to them, I'm like, yeah, tell me everything. Like, I treat it, honestly, treat it just like being a cop. Like when you're talking to someone, like field interview, yeah, tell me everything you know, tell me, and
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
listen. So, and that's kind of, I guess, yeah, started me kind of like thinking like, well, what could I do? Because my goal for the Good Leader brand and Good and Dangerous and everything, honestly, my overall goal is to do the social media, do the podcast, do the brand, make it self-sustainable, and my goal is to, I wanna start, I don't know what the exact wording for it was, this I guess how I see it in my head. I've only heard it, the concept talked about one time, but they talked about it, they called it like a men's shed, where like where it'd be like a gym, a barbershop, a conference room, like podcast studio all in one, because they said men tend to help each other when they're all in the same space and they're just working on something. So like, hey, if you're going there and you could work there and you're just like, say you're working on something and I'm there working on something, but we don't know each other. But
Yeah.
then we're like, oh, we start interacting because we're both sitting there working on something. They said
Huh.
it's the same thing. That's where it came from. Is like you see a guy working on his car, then another guy walks by, like, hey, what are you doing? And another guy walks, and then pretty soon they're all working together to like
Huh.
fix this.
That's a
So
cool way
to
to
me,
put it. Yeah, that's neat. I
yeah,
never thought of that.
yeah, it's like, and it's someone said it. That's where I kind of got the idea about it. And I said, well, if I can create something like that, I said it doesn't matter if you're a cop, it doesn't matter if you're in the military, it doesn't matter what you are. It's just a place for men to go. And I
Mhm.
said, and for me, I feel like by trying to make ourselves become better men, that would help us also improve the dynamic between men and women that's kind of going on right now too. That's why you never see me really like what are those guys like the red pill like bashing women? Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's because get it. I mean, I grew up with sisters, I've had my own experience with girls. Trust me, I get it 100%. But I also understand like I don't wanna be one of those people where we're just sitting there, like, saying, "Hey, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" They're like, "No, we need to let's fix ourselves
Mhm.
first, and then we can make everything." And then, and people will usually follow suit, and that's the thing I think what I've liked so far about the brand. A lot of the guys that I've talked to, like yourself, and everyone seems to be doing something. It's almost like now it's just like, I think your platform, my platform, and the guys are kind of, I think, leaning toward that faith-based having purpose. I feel like we're throwing up a kinda like, what do they call, like a lighthouse, and
Mm.
now other guys are seeing it because now it's like, "Hey, these guys are not calling us to do like, where I'm not sitting here telling someone like, 'Hey, you need to, make sure that you have to buy stuff from me, and I need you
Yeah.
to follow my program, and I'm gonna coach you and fix your,' like, I'm not telling anybody that stuff. It's more to me, it's like I almost take it from that movie, which is kind of funny. That movie, was it American History X, where he goes in the prison yard, he's like, "I'm gonna throw my flag up." So to me, that's why when even my shirt where I say "Raise the flag," I kinda see it like that. Like, this is how I am. This is
Mhm.
what I'm about. If you're about the same thing, then come over here.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I remember having this conversation with my, lieutenant, the one who passed away real early in my career, because when I went to my department, he said his exact words were with me were that he said, "You're making waves in the department." So I was like, and I said, "About what? Like, what am I doing?" He said, "Because I was trying to get our union guys together. I was putting together like our FTO program, revamping it, things like that. A lot of these things I did in our department." And he said, and a lot of the older guys, they don't like it. And I told them, I was like, LT, I was like, you know me. I said, I'll find other guys like me. And I said, I'm not asking to be a part of. I said, we'll get together and we'll take over if we have to. Like I said, I'll work with anyone and I said, I'm friends. I'm not trying to make waves or whatever it's called, but I don't no one likes the way things are going. And I'm not, and what do they always say? Bring solutions, don't bring
Mhm.
problems.
Yep.
So that's what I'm doing. I said, so what's the issue other than they don't like that they didn't do it. They don't have the capability of doing it. So that's what kind of ended up, happening. So a lot of the things that we fixed were because of that. And then that's where I kind of started learning about just things like that. Like if you start doing certain things, you're gonna initially always start off on your own, and then that attracts other men who are on the same mission, and then you guys just start working on the same thing, and
Mhm.
that's how it kind of goes. And I think that's very important because a lot of the guys that I used to work with, even the younger guys, I see them doing a lot of good things. A lot of the guys on social media that follow me that where I used to be their supervisor and them doing good things. And it's not like I'm saying, "Oh, let me take the credit for that." That's not what I think. But I think the same way Sergeant Price and Adams help push me in the right direction, I want to think that I help push them in the right direction. And that's kind of what my goal is now. Is like, hey, I can't fix everything for you, but what I could do is I could say, I'm not going to push you in the wrong direction. I'm not going to tell you to go do something that I wouldn't do myself. And I'm not going to encourage you to do, any negative things. I think like before me you're talking about, I'm not going to encourage you to, the drama. I'm not here promoting like the prison aesthetic. And that's what, because me being, Hispanic, especially in California, I have a big issue with the guys. I said, that's cool if because my co-host Dave, he's been to prison. Me and him always talk about this. He's been to jail. I have family that's been there. I said, but they don't act like that. I said, there's a
Mm.
difference between making a mistake, doing what you did, and promoting it like it's a lifestyle.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's my issue
Good
with it.
point. Good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell you to go, hey, you need to go crash out your life, become a, drug addict, do a couple of years in state prison, and when you come back, you can start a podcast and talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, don't do that. Don't do
yeah.
that.
How about yeah, like how about you listen to guys have been through it,
Hmm.
do some positive changes. You don't need to go the hard way, and maybe find a different purpose and a different path for yourself. And and let's do that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of men out there, especially coming from the faith standpoint, are looking for other men to kind of, whether it's a podcast or it's a brand or a book, they're trying to find resources to kind of belong to something, but also to improve themselves, but they just don't really know how to go about it. So you and I doing a podcast and with your social media page and then doing stuff online, I think it gives men something to kind of gravitate towards because
Yeah,
this day and age in 2025, and I love how you spin the masculinity piece on your platform because we're kind of being shut down. Like we're kind of being
yeah,
told, like, especially as a Christian, like you said earlier, we're not Jesus. We're not just going to get punched in the face and not react. We're going to beat somebody's ass because that's what we're trained to do, and that's just how we are as guys. But I think men are trying to understand, like, you can be a Christian, you can be a husband and a provider and protector, but you can also be kind, loving, and gentle, but know how to flip that switch if you got to do it. But society doesn't want that. I mean, look at, like, I think we're about the same age. Look at the action heroes when we were kids, man, like Arnold and Dolph Lundgren. And now you got dudes like, what's that guy's name from the Spider-Man movie, like Tom Holland? Like
yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's like they're dorks, man. Like we had these like studs growing up. And so like men are trying to be conditioned now to not have a voice, to listen to what society says, oh, you're bad because you have testosterone and you have this. And so I think what we're trying to do is kind of pull it back the other way. Like you can be
yeah,
masculine, but you got to know how to still not be selfish, not be an
yeah.
asshole, and not neglect your family because you don't want to deal with your own issues like mental health or whatever the case may be. So I see it. I see there's a movement building, man. And there's a lot of noise in our arena with like guys like we talked about off air kicking, starting drama, whining and bitching about text messages they've got and using their military experience is kind of like, hey, listen to me because I have this warfare device. But look what this guy texted me. He hurt my feelings. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
go online and complain about it. So
yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm getting long-winded, but I think what you're doing is awesome, man. I love the stuff you put out and just the whole motto, good and dangerous. I love that. That's badass. It's cool.
No, I agree with everything you're saying. I think a guy from, I want to say he's from your area. I've only seen him online. I don't remember his name. He's a bald headed, kind of good built shaped guy. He's a pastor though. He has a big old beard. Did some men's conference not too long ago, but he said, kind of, he said, or maybe it was Victor Marks, one of them. It was one of these guys that said that. He said, when when men walk into your church that haven't been to church, what kind of men are they going to see? And that to
Mm,
me was like, that's to me the thing is like if they walk in, they see some dudes working out, trained. We're here. We go to church on Sundays, but we are not this passive, docile men that you think that we are. I think that a lot of men can resonate with that because, like I said, when you asked me earlier, like I always grew up, around church and religion but it wasn't until I started seeing that I felt more accepted because I felt like what I was being told was like what you said. No, you have to be this docile, conformed man to be part of church. And then as I got older, I realized, no, I don't have to be like that. And I just told someone that the other day, because they were asking about kind of like get questions about that about my message. They're like, I can't really figure you out. And I'm like, I said, because I said, you'll talk about Jesus, then you'll talk about something else. I said, well, I said, if you look in the Bible, I said, a lot of the men, I said, they were either warriors. None of them were perfect. They were imperfect men. You know what I mean? Even I think it was David, right? Who they said was David was um kind of like God's own like an image of God, right? But he still became an adulterer. Right? And so I always
mhm,
tell people, I'm like, I said, you know, Jesus was perfect. Jesus was
mhm.
the perfect one where we can never be like him. But everyone around him was not perfect. The disciples were not
Yeah.
perfect. Other people there, none of them were perfect. So sometimes when I people will say like, well, Christians aren't supposed to act like that. Like who? to me, this is just my opinion when people say that, but it's kind of like if you don't go to church and you're not even trying, it's the same as someone telling me I couldn't go to the military because I have shin splints or I didn't become a cop because I didn't do that. Like it's the same shit to me. Like it
That's
really is. It's
hilarious.
kind of like
Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome, dude.
yeah.
That's awesome.
It's kind of like it's like make you have no skin in the game, so you're trying to tell
Yeah,
like no, you're not gonna tell me what to do. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
so that's just the way I look at it. Like if we're in the same thing, and then you're telling me like hey, you know what, John, you're doing too much, then I'll probably listen to you. But if it's just like, hey, I haven't been to church, I don't even know what the Bible's talking about, I don't know any of this, but you're gonna say that you think this is how Christians should act. To me, I think it's I don't want to say it's big plan, but what I do see, I think between the because everyone says like some at least the people around me like, when did you become political? I said, I don't think that I became political. I think what happened when I started seeing how politics started trying to infiltrate our values, right? Like our
hmm
kids, what we should do, what we should say or do. Get rid of the police. The military's bad. Men are bad. And so to me, I felt like, well, all I'm doing is pushing back on it
yeah,
because to me, I don't agree with any of that stuff. And I said, and if we don't push back, is what to me, I believe they don't want us to do because there's a that's an old video. It's that guy from I mentioned it in a different post before, but it was a guy from the KGB where he's talking about, the downfall of a nation is when patriotic, faith, God-fearing men just stop doing what they're supposed to do. Because now there
hmm
is no more frontline. And I don't think it's us, honestly. I think our generation, and this is what I tell my kids. I said, you still have guys like me and you and our generation that are still around that we're in that area where we're not young, but we're not too old to do what we got to do. Like we'll still do and they know that. The
hmm
next generation, I'm not so sure
No,
because I
man.
see these dudes
Yeah.
come to the gym in their pajamas, like they don't want to they don't want to be cops. They don't want to be in the military. They don't want to be criticized. They're
Yeah.
hopped up on. I was thinking about this the other day because I was trying to think of an idea for a kind of a post about it. And this is not to knock, I guess, to talk down to them. It's just saying this is not what it is, right? It's like I see guys that are hopped up on testosterone. It's like you're strong in the body, but you
hmm
still look weak to me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If that makes
Yeah.
any sense. Like
Yeah.
it's
100%, man. Yeah.
and I see that a lot. I'm like, dude, bro, you're in badass shape. You're a stud in the gym, but life does something to you and it defeats you. You know what I
hmm
mean? Because you're
Yep.
you're you're mistaking physical strength for mental strength. That's not the same. And I mean, that's something I think as a man and a cop and the military things, you kind of learn that in those aspects because you're kind of like you learn at a certain point all the mental stuff or the physical stuff can go away. You can be beat down by whatever, and now you're just left with your mental, and that's where it
hmm
really becomes a battle of like will. And that's where I try to tell guys. I said the hardest thing in your life can't be just going to the gym. Like I love
Yeah.
the gym. I love the gym. I mean, I'm gonna go to the gym after this, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that can't be the only thing that you're doing. You know what I mean? There
Right.
has to be more.
Yeah. It's got to be the physical, the spiritual, and the mental. You've got to focus on everything. And to your point about the new generation, they're obsessed with video games like Call of Duty. They're obsessed with these podcasts that talk about what this Green Beret did or what this Ranger did and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, they're not going to go take an oath. They're not going to go join the military. They're not going to become a cop because they're they don't have the same mindset that our generation did. Like, hey, we had a sense of patriotism. We wanted to aspire to be something bigger than ourselves. But a lot of it too, I think, especially where I live, man, these kids are given everything. Like they're rocking. You ought to see the cars that these high school. I have a 15-year-old daughter. She's not driving one of these, but you ought to see some of these high school kids in my town driving like brand new Mercedes and shit like that. And they didn't have to earn anything. So there's no reason for them to serve their country or community because it's all been given to them. And I think that generation coming up, they're dangerous in a way because they're not going to carry the torch when it comes to standing up for what's right, spreading the gospel of Jesus. They're going to just be conforming to whatever bullshit agenda is thrown at them because they're all stuck on a phone or whatever, man. And it does take like guys like you and me to come out and say, hey, you got to start doing this stuff early. Don't make the mistakes that I did, but work on yourself and help others and be humble versus, oh, well, I don't have to get a job because my daddy has a trust or whatever and I'm going to get it. And that's what I see where I live, man. And that's dangerous, like in a bad way.
No, yeah,
You know?
I agree. And if you see these, I mean, it's like what just happened. That kid that just murdered his parents, was it Rob Reiner?
Yeah, yeah.
And then even celebrities, right? I always tell people, I said, how crazy. I can't remember who I was having this conversation with about it, but I was like, said, imagine you're a celebrity, you make millions of dollars, you have fame, all these things, but you still kill yourself. So what
Mhm.
does that tell you right there? Like that it doesn't matter what you physically, material, have everything, you can still feel like you don't, like you're not a happy person. And that's crazy
Mhm.
to me because it's that just tells you like that there's a whole different aspect of like us being, human, that people have to recognize more. And that's like your purpose. Your purpose has to be in line with what you're doing. Everything else you can be given, and you can have it, and you can still feel be like poor of spirit. You know what I mean? Where you're
Mhm.
still
Oh
not
yeah.
gonna want to be around life. And that's been proven so many times. All these different celebrities that and have taking themselves out, and I always tell people, I'm like, I said, that just proves it over and over and over. I said, these people that a lot of people would deem as like, man, their life is set, but they still do that. But then guys that are working, I said a guy who's an auto mechanic making nowhere near the money, but loves his job, loves his family, doing what he want to do. He's not doing that, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't have all those resources. So why is he able to make it and this guy isn't? And I think that comes down to the purpose piece of it. That's what I that's what I saw, whether it was
Yeah.
growing up in, my area, whether it was, military, working in law enforcement, even when I worked in the jails, everything was about purpose. Guys that join gangs, they're looking for a purpose. Guys
Yeah.
that join the military looking for a purpose. Law enforcement looking for a purpose. Guys that are working out in the gym trying to get big, they're looking for a purpose. You know what I mean? It's all
Mhm.
it's all purpose driven. That's why with your podcast, I love that, the peace, power, purpose, because it's all the foundation of everything. And like I said, it just now these kids nowadays are just, and it's not even all of them. Like I know two young guys that are doing pretty good. My boy Suarez and another guy Mejia. Suarez is a corrections officer now, and Mejia just became a cop where I'm at. And these guys, which was crazy, this was the crazy part, right? These guys would do good, work out, do good, hard workers, and they would almost get ostracized by the younger guys around them because they were
Hmm.
different from them. So I think a
Mm.
lot of that like lazy, weak attitude is like, hey, be lazy and weak like us.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
nah, you like, and so I think that's why they always kind of, when I would talk to them, they would kind of, gravitate towards what I was saying because again, it's that, that lighthouse mentality. This is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm not going to apologize for saying it. And if you like it, then you like it. If you don't, you don't. And I saw that either did two things. It either made people come towards me or made people like, well, I don't agree with that. Hurt
Yeah.
my feelings.
But you know what makes you stand out too is that you're authentic. It's not
Oh yeah.
it's not a show, it's not smoke and mirrors, and a lot of social media in general, there's some good parts to it. I'm learning that as this podcast progresses, but there's a lot of it that's just fake and it's not real life, and people get stuck in this kind of, oh, I want to be like that guy, but that guy's not really like that,
Yeah.
but and I think what's cool about your brand is that you're showing authenticity, that you're humble, and that you're willing to send a message to anybody, regardless of their background, whether they've been in the military or been in law enforcement. And I think that, that is going to have a positive effect on people. It just may take the younger generation a little bit more to understand the purpose, to find a purpose versus just being lazy, wearing pajamas and not giving a shit about themselves. But I mean,
No,
but
I
yeah.
I I agree 100%. I've ran into some social influencers. And I'm like, "Why are you so I was laughing. Me and my friend laughed about this the other day at the gym. I said, every time I run into one of like these, like especially at the gym, kind of in that scene, is like, I
Hmm.
said, how are you so friendly on your videos? When you see them in person, they're not like, not that they're not friendly, but they're not
Yeah.
that person. So it's the
Right.
funniest thing to me. It's like in a video, you're like, "Hey, sunshines, look at me," and then you see them in person, and it's like, And it's like introverted, like this, and then so it kind of trips me out. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
why don't you? I don't know. I just
That's funny, man.
I
That's funny. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up, man, is there like a motto or a favorite scripture that you have that you'd like to share with the listeners today?
dang, I'm trying to. I have a bunch of different. The one I have tattooed on my arm is for my girls. God
Nice.
is with her; she will not fall, and that's for my daughters, and actually for all the kind of like I guess women in my life, because I remember when I got it, it was because my two daughters. It was very much more for them because so I guess the kind of a little short story about it. So because my real dad was never around as I grew up, I think a lot of initially in the first part of my life was driven, I want to say not by hate, but by trying to prove something. Like I'm trying to prove that like fuck this. To me, I felt like I wanted to be everything opposite of what he was. I'm gonna go to the military. I'm gonna become everything that I thought he was of what he did. I'm the opposite of. I'm gonna be there for my kids. I'm gonna, all these things. So when my daughter was first born, I remember driving and I was thinking this thing of like, I couldn't hate my dad and love my daughter at the same time. I don't know why
Oh,
started
wow.
thinking that. Yeah. So I kind of just let it go. I don't know. That's the only way I can describe it. I remember the place. I remember the bridge I was driving on. I remember that was what I was doing. And I just remember being like, I gotta let this go. I can't be, it's gonna, I felt like hate and love doesn't work can't work in the same space, right?
Right.
So when I did that, it kinda changed my perspective on a lot of things. And when I see, like you said, when seeing a lot of the different people when they're like, I guess, the controversial or saying different things, I feel like that's what they're dealing with. Like they're feeling, even if it's successful. I mean, you can be successful with a hate driven brand. Like so you can be successful and
Mhm.
like you know, I'm gonna expose people or I'm gonna, just rip on people. But I think eventually that hate has to go somewhere. It has to
Yeah.
go into you. It has to go. It can't. It's gonna. So I'm like, I'm not gonna spend to me my time, not doing that. So yeah, that's kind of my because I don't know, because I have it on my arm and I always see it all the time, and I just remember why I did it, and it had a lot to do with my daughters, and it had a lot to do with me at the same time.
Okay.
So it
Yeah.
kinda changed I guess, my perspective. So that's why I remember that moment and age and
Yeah,
everything.
no, I think that's a good point. I mean, light and dark can't exist in the same. You gotta have one or the other. And I think, we have to learn as men to forgive. And that sounds like that's what you did. You kind of forgave your dad so you could love your daughter. And dude, I want to tell you this because I don't know if you've heard this recently, but I love your outlook on life and the humility that you have. And I bet you were a hell of a guy to work for because a lot of supervisors in my past life, they didn't have that kind of outlook, man. You seem like a really squared away dude. And I respect you a lot. I really appreciate your input and just the way you look on things because we operate in a space that is full of negativity and real housewives of whatever. And it's refreshing. It's refreshing, man. It's refreshing to meet someone that has a positive outlook. Not that everybody's bad, but it's refreshing to meet another guy that's in the same space that is trying to make a difference in this world by leading by example.
Nah, I thank you, man. I appreciate it, and everything I said is not it's to me, it's me, but it's not me. Like, I wouldn't be the person that like, when I mentioned my dad and I mentioned those guys, it's because it's kinda like, to me, they're all parts of, I guess, how I ended up being, and I wouldn't be that person without them. And so a lot of even my patriotism part, when people like on why I'm so like I look at it like this, like, my friends died for this country. There's no way you're gonna get me to back down and say, "No, I'm not patriotic." So a lot of
Yeah.
that stems from that. It stems from me, I guess, speaking for them, in hindsight, I guess to kind of, from my, I guess, I am positive, and I tell people this all the time. I said, for all those guys that died, they're not here. So on my worst day, this is what I tell myself. Literally, anytime something bad happened, I'm like, well, I'm still alive to fight about it. They're not alive. So I kind of like, yeah. So it kind of makes me kind of, I kind of like put it in that perspective, and I'm just like, I don't know. I just kind of it makes me really like more look at it like, yeah, this sucks, but yeah, at least I'm still here.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to look at it, man. Where can people learn more about the Good Leader brand and also the Good Leader podcast?
The Good Leader podcast, where it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify. You can look up the Good Leader podcast, and it should pop up. I think there's a couple like leadership ones, so kind of sometimes is in there. You know,
Okay.
honestly, I haven't like I do it pretty consistent. I feel like you're way more consistent than I am. That's why I want to kind of get to, but it has more to do with my schedule a little bit because I'm kind of like running around doing a lot of things at once. But
Yeah.
I think this next year I kinda told myself I'm gonna be I already had talked to the guy who produces it for me and kinda being more consistent about it.
Nice.
So, yeah, they could find it on YouTube, Spotify, social media. I'm always on Instagram is probably the easiest way to get a kind of a hold of me. And that's
Okay.
right there's the Good Leader brand, and I usually will post up like I put the links right there in the whatever the bio. I think that's what it's called. And so and also my website is goodleader.shop. That's where I put all my gear, so like my hat, the shirt, all this stuff. I'm always making stuff like that. So
Nice.
yeah, any of those places. And if you're not sure, just hit me up on my messages. Sometimes it doesn't take me a long time to get back to people. It might sometimes take me a day or two because sometimes I'll just get inundated a little bit, and I usually
Mm.
try to like you know, I like if you talk to me, like I actually will engage with you and have a conversation. Like, but I'm
Yeah.
always like you said, I always try to keep it on a positive note. I'm not gonna sit there and argue with you if you don't agree with what I'm.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, how do you feel about closing us out with a prayer, man?
But yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it.
All right, man. Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I would say God help us in our journey to help man and men and lead them to faith, discipline and strength. I know we're in a trying time where it's not always an easy thing to do, but I believe that if more men like ourselves step up, that we can start leading in the right direction for ultimately make things better for everyone else. We don't ask for things to be easy. We ask for us to be strong, and we ask for guidance when we need it, and then whenever we're facing difficult decisions. And all God's people say, "Amen."
Amen. Thank you for watching and listening to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Drop new episodes every Wednesday and every Thursday. And be sure to tune in the new year in 2026. It's right around the corner. John, thank you so much, man, for coming on today,
Yeah,
dude. I appreciate your time. It's really good talking with you, man.
I would have if I would have thought about it more, I would have done it like I was like I should have done a prayer like DMX.
That was good, man. Thank you for praying. People get kind of worked up when I put them on the spot. So you did good. I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, praying, talking about your faith, and just being a good guy, man. Just being a good man, being a good leader. We're trying to carry that torch and help other men, and I'm honored to be doing this with you, man.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Love
Awesome,
doing
man.
it.
Well, yeah. God bless you, man. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.